Welcome to Tunes Talk. I'm your host, Noah Dellinger, and today I'm going to be talking about my top 3 underrated guitarists. So, starting off the list is for the underrated guitarists is Peter Frampton. And now I know most of you think, well, Peter Frampton is actually very popular, and he is. But I think the main reason that he's popular is that he was marketed really for to the teenage culture, mainly for his looks and stuff. And he wasn't really put out there and drafted for his musicality and his ability to play guitar. I think it was really just to be a pop icon. And honestly, I think Peter's skill goes way past that. And I think he's a really innovative player with a distinct voice, especially, with like the talk box and stuff. He's just a great player and a fun one to listen to. One of his best pieces is one of his most popular ones is Do You Feel Like We Do? And that's a great piece, a great solo. Very innovative and a very smooth style of playing. It's just really fun to listen to, and I don't understand why people don't realize how great he is. So number 2 on my list is Mark Knopfler for Dire Straits, and then later solo. I feel a lot of people know who Mark Knopfler is, and they respect him as a good guitarist. And he sold a lot of copies too. Dire Straits has sold 75 million copies overall, and he sold a lot, even more as a solo artist. But I feel like he's really overlooked by a lot of the stuff that happened with the money for nothing stuff, with the pop culture, MTV kind of stuff. I feel like if people tend to look at that more so than the Tunnel of Love and Telegraph Road style stuff that he does, which is really more of his style. I think if you really listen to Mark Knopfler, Money for Nothing is really out there for him. And the main reason why I say he's underrated is because, 1, nobody talks about him anymore, and 2, his Dire Straits hasn't been inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and they haven't been nominated or anything. And they've sold 75 million copies again, and they're a rock and roll band. And somehow people like Run and DMC and Madonna have managed to squeeze in there somehow, which doesn't make sense to me, because Dire Straits is a pure rock and roll band that came in at an interesting time, but they played great music and it was rock and roll. And so yeah, his greatest pieces, like Brothers in Arms was not his best album, in my opinion. I mean, Brothers in Arms is a great song, and Money for Nothing was out there, but I think Telegraph Road is one of his best works, and along with Tunnel of Love. They're long songs, but they're just so well composed. And unlike a lot of other guitarists, I think Mark Knopfler could also be described more as a composer and an orchestrator, as long as a guitarist. And he's also a poet, and his songwriting is spectacular. I mean, it's up there in the ranks of Bob Dylan and such. And I feel like that's overlooked a lot. Like a lot of people, when they're looking for a rock and roll guitarist, are looking more for Hendrix type, with that really obscure style, and that's great. Hendrix has a great style, and Hendrix is fun to listen to. I feel like Mark Knopfler is the polar opposite of that, of fun to listen to. He's more concise, his phrasing is sharper, and it's more planned out, as of Hendrix's impromptu style. Yeah, and Mark Knopfler, I mean, he's got everything in his songs nailed down, and it just works. All the components work so well together. So yeah, his playing style with the finger picking is, I've never heard, unless it's like a cover band or something, I've never heard anyone emulate that style and succeed with it, and the genre that he was playing and the music that he was playing. And again, like Hendrix, there's been a lot of people that play like him or take his style and get really popular with it, like Stevie Ray Vaughan and John Mayer and people like that, but there's no people that are doing that with Mark Knopfler, and I think that kind of shows how unique he is and how unique his playing style is. So that's my number 2. Alrighty, my number 1 pick, the most underrated guitarist in my opinion, is Buddy Guy, the great blues guitarist. And again, like Mark Knopfler, a lot of people know him, but I don't think enough people don't give him enough credit for what he's done, and such an influence that he's been on rock and roll and blues rock and just music that we know today. He's inspired so many people and influenced more people than than a lot of people give him credit for, and his music is great. He's a great guitarist, obviously. I mean, he wouldn't be able to inspire so many people without being a great player. And he inspired a lot of the greatest players from the 60s to the 80s and on, as in Gilmour, Hendrix, Clapton, and Page. Those are the biggest 4 I could really think of right now. And just some statistics. If these men were inspired by Buddy Guy greatly, then Clapton's $80 million, 80 million copies. Page's 200 million copies. Hendrix's 80 million copies. And Gilmour's 210 million copies are somewhat to credit for Buddy Guy. And not only just copies and stuff, I mean, that doesn't really matter, but just such an impact that it has made on the world today. I mean, he really set up that framework for rock and roll as we know it today with Zeppelin and Pink Floyd and Jimi Hendrix and Clapton and all that. I mean, he's just such a big inspiration, and people don't give him credit for that. A lot of people just look at the guitarist like Page, but they don't look any further, like who inspired them and stuff. And I think if you look at all those guitarists like that, you'll come back to one main source, which is Buddy Guy. And I mean, I know a lot of people would just say, well, Buddy Guy, who is that? Probably just some of those old acoustic guitar players. I mean, he's not. He makes beautiful music, and it's well orchestrated. His phrasing is beautiful. Everything about his licks and his solos are great. His vocals are great too. I know that doesn't matter for a guitarist, but I mean, it just makes him a great musician. A very organized musician and soulful and passionate musician. And even in his older age, he still kicks butt. I mean, if you listen to like What's Up With That Woman, I mean, I don't know, he's like 80-something years old and he's still making some of the best guitar licks and best guitar solos out there. So check out What's Up With That Woman. That's a great song. It's one of his newer ones, and that's why he's my number 1.
You can go your own way.